So who does Conor Benn fight next? Now, when we speak about Conor Benn, we have to address the two Eubank fights. And I would argue that those two Eubank fights, they were emotional affairs. They were physical affairs, but they were emotional affairs. The first fight was a brutal fight. But in that fight, we need to ask ourselves a question. What did Conor Benn gain? Or did he gain anything? I would argue that he gained experience. He gained multifaceted experience. He gained experience from fighting, the learning that he got from the first and the second fights. He gained experience from big crowds because he wouldn't have experienced those type of big crowds before. And he also experienced a massive marketing buildup, and that can beat up a fighter psychologically. So he gained experience in a multitude of ways, and that's important. And through those two fights, Conor Benn has become a British brand. He's become a part of the algorithm. Of course, there's a variety to his brand. There's his father, who was a great fighter, a great fighter. And then there's the brand that he's built, primarily off the strength of the two Chris Eubank Jr. fights, which were great fights. And in a sense, he came back from the brink of defeat in more senses than one. He had the literal defeat, the first defeat that he avenged, but then he had a defeat with regards to the test. So Conor Benn has shown psychological resilience, and he's also shown some evolution within his boxing IQ. But there's another question. How good or how bad was Chris Eubank Jr.? And depending on how you answer that question is how you define how good you think Conor Benn is. One thing we can say for certain is that Conor Benn has a fan favorite style. He's very pleasing to watch. And like I said, Conor Benn is very pleasing to watch. He brings the fight to his opponents. He throws those big hooks to the head and to the body. And you want to watch Conor Benn because he's entertaining. Maybe not necessarily to the boxing purist, but he's definitely entertaining to the casual fan. And to be honest, Conor Benn's style, it can stimulate the boxing purist as well. So maybe that critique is unfair, but the casual fan that's just looking for pure entertainment will see entertainment in Conor Benn, and that's in the ring and outside of the ring. But again, we come back to this question, how good is Conor Benn? And when we think about levels in boxing, we can kind of categorize different levels. We can think of the British level, the European level, championship level, elite level, etc. Where does Benn fit within that? Clearly, his team will argue that he's championship level, but many may consider him to be under that level. But again, to answer that question, or to try and answer that question, we have to establish how good was the Chris Eubank Jr.? How good was that version of Chris Eubank Jr.? But what we can say, regardless of the level that he's at, with regards to his boxing pedigree, we can say that Conor Benn's brand makes him a cash cow because he has become a brand, not only because of what he inherited from his father, but also because of what he did in the ring, particularly in the first fight, because even though he won the second fight, the first fight was a fan favorite fight. There's other things to mention about Conor Benn. The relationship with his trainer, Tony Sims, I believe. And I think that they have a very positive relationship. From the outside looking in, it looks like their relationship is very positive. And there's one thing that I want to say, and I think this gives credit to Tony Sims. Remember, boxing trainers, they harness boxing environments. And I think the boxing IQ improvements in the second fight, where we saw the feints, we saw the hitting the right hand to the body and then transitioning to the head. We saw good head movement, and overall we saw patience and we saw composure. And we have to give credit to Conor Benn, but also to Tony Sims. So I think Tony Sims has been nurturing Conor Benn into a better boxer. So when we talk about what fights are the best for Conor Benn, again, there's a few questions. Are we fighting for legacy? Are we fighting for cultural impact? Are we fighting for money? Or are we fighting for all three? Anyway, I can think of 4 names. I can think of 4 names for Conor Benn. So the first one is Shakur Stevenson, the slick southpaw. So this would be putting Shakur against Conor Benn is putting the slick southpaw against the rugged, aggressive Conor Benn. And I think this would be a very interesting fight. I think if you're in the Conor Benn's corner, you would definitely be concerned with Shakur Stevenson's ring IQ, because he may not be a fan favorite fighter, but he is a fighter that controls the pace through high ring IQ. He controls the tempo. He has ring generalship, good counterpunching. People are saying he will be an elite fighter. So that's a very difficult fight, but it's definitely a fight where Conor Benn has the big brand, but so does Shakur Stevenson. He has a brand as well. Then we have Devin Haney. And even though Devin Haney, some consider a negative fighter, he clearly is a very good fighter. And even though some define his style, they give the narrative bias as he's boring, he still has a name. He has a brand. And this would be a huge UK pay-per-view, potentially. And, the Shakur Stevens, the Devin Haney's, those fights, I think they could sell with the right promotion, with the right marketing. And in fairness, Conor Benn is good at playing the villain. He's good at playing that role, and he played that role very effectively against Chris Eubank Jr. So he knows how to market fights. And then we have Rolly Romero, and we have the excitement of the fight, but then we have the unpredictability of the build-up. Rolly Romero is good at talking. He's very, very good at talking, and of course he can fight. I think this would be an easy sell because it's a fan favorite, and this is likely to be a very good fight. This could be a brutal fight. This could be an early fight. You could make the argument that Rolly Romero has improved his boxing IQ and that he's improved with his style. However, you may say that he is susceptible with regards to his punching resistance. But this would be a good fight, and I think the casual boxing fan can get involved. And I also would chuck in Ryan Garcia in the mix. Maybe some would disagree, especially after Ryan Garcia lost to Rolly Romero. But I think that's also, again, a fan favorite fight. Exciting styles. I know that Ryan Garcia's last fight wasn't exciting, but generally speaking, Ryan Garcia is an exciting fighter, explosive with that left hook, which he showed against Devin Haney. So that again could be an explosive fight, but it also can be an explosive promotion. Ryan Garcia is a master marketer. So I think there's various options to Conor Benn that could be massive, massive fights. And you know what? There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like about Conor Benn. Family man, private school educated, yet still relatable to the working class. Work that one out. He trains really hard, and he's passionate about the sport, passionate about winning. These are good things. The only bit of constructive feedback, and no, none of us are perfect, is that the alleged intimidation attempts on certain individuals, one particular boxing individual who's very well respected, is just a little bit disappointing. It is disappointing. And hopefully the people around his circle can guide him, because there's just really no need for that. And it makes him look bad when there's so much that could make him look good. So I'm not saying he's immature, but there's definitely levels for improvement. And all of us can improve in life, whether it's in business, relationships, etc. But I think when I heard those rumors, it was disappointing. And maybe there was some form of miscommunication or context. There's two sides to every story. But however, let me clarify that there's a lot to like about Conor Benn, a lot to like. And I think the British public had a lot of pessimism towards Conor Benn when he was going through that darkness, but he's come out of that darkness. And I think he's starting to regain momentum with regards to building his brand, and people want to watch him, and that's important. There's another important question here, and that's, if he's going to fight the fighters that we've mentioned, I believe he has to go down 2 weight classes. And it's an important question to ask. Could this be detrimental to his performances? Is he going to be able to perform to his highest level if he comes down in weight? And I think the important thing here is about his team, is about the scientific approach, and it's about doing this in the best way, because you want Conor Benn to be 100% the best, particularly against any of those people that we've mentioned. But the important thing to recognize is this. Conor Benn has confidence, Conor Benn has momentum, Conor Benn has experience, he clearly has power, and hopefully he can make more money and hopefully get a title for the British public.